Howard Mann, creator of Conscious Shifting, and welcome to Conscious Shifting. Before we get started, a quick warning and disclaimer. Conscious shifting and all known side effects will improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while providing the ideal environment for spiritual awakening, helping you to live the life of your dreams and influence the world in a positive way. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you and you'd like to be part of it, then follow us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube, and then join us here Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. California time for Conscious Shifting. The best way to communicate with us is during a live, during a replay of the live, or on one of our many daily thought-provoking posts. Simply place your question in the comment box and we will respond from a spiritual perspective to the benefit of everyone. So, with that, let's get started. The question of the week is, are there spiritual reasons or explanations for all of the horrendous things that we go through in life? Yes, there are. There's things that we go through in life, and there's spiritual reasons for that. But individual things are one thing. They're basically karma or consequence for decisions that we've made, actions that we've taken. But tonight, what we're going to talk about is something that takes it even further. Because I didn't read the entire question, but there's a whole list of things that they were going through. And that's kind of how the dark night of the soul is. It's not just one thing, it's everything. All hell breaks loose. So that is the topic of tonight's live, the dark night of the soul. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. I see Susan and Kim. All right, let's take a deep breath. Hi, Trey. Way down to the belly button. And then as you exhale, release all tension. Let's do that again. Big, deep breath. And relax. And one more time. Big, deep breath. And relax. All right. Feeling better? Then let's get started. Have you ever heard of the dark night of the soul? I know some of you have. Some of you may not have ever heard of it before. The first thing is that whether you realize it or not, you're living through the dark night of the soul on a massive scale as we speak. For instance, would you say that you're horrified by what you've witnessed during the past few years? And based on recent events, are you concerned for your future generations, and your country? Do you worry about the future more than ever before? When you think about it, do terms like Banana Republic and Armageddon come to mind? You're not alone. What's with the hatred? What's going on in the hearts and minds of people? Why is there so much corruption in government and in the news media? There are spiritual reasons for what's going on, and consequently, there are also spiritual answers. For example, here in the United States, at the very founding of our nation, spirit was unleashed by the founding fathers. And as has always been the case, spirit is being attacked by darkness. Dark energy has surrounded our planet. Significant events are unfolding, with more to come. The truth threatens dark forces, and so they try to extinguish the light. This ancient story has been told in many different ways. One of them is the dark night of the soul. And the following will help get you through it. All right. See if we have any questions so far. I see comments flying by. Kim says, or resurrection. Yes, it's kind of like that. If you succeed at the dark night of the soul, which we'll get to how to do that, then it's very much like you've been crucified and resurrected. And the resurrection is really the important part, isn't it? Susan, had a great day today. Got to watch my grandson's graduation from basic training in the Air Force in San Antonio. Awesome. That is a great day. Hey, Ray, how's it going? All right. So, number one is that everyone goes through the dark night of the soul. You're likely going to go through the dark night of the soul at least twice in this lifetime. And typically, each time you go through it, it'll take a few years to complete. So that's one thing that makes it different than many of the challenges we go through in life. The dark night of the soul is not a short thing at all. It can go on for a few years. It can go on for 10 years. It just depends. And during the process, it'll seem like you've descended into hell. That's why it's referred to as the dark night of the soul. Hey, Chris, how's it going? So, while it'll be the worst of times, you'll have growth opportunities unlike at any other moment. And that's one of the things to help get through the dark night of the soul is focus on that. Focus on the opportunities, because that's the point of the whole thing. You'll rise in consciousness to previously unimaginable heights, provided that you go all the way rather than getting stuck. The point is not only to understand the darkness, but to emerge on the other side of the night into the new day's dawn, into the light. That's key. Focus on the light. Go to the light. The dark night of the soul is a time of significant transformation, particularly if you complete the process. You know, the thing is, though, it can also be a time of great healing, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Miracle healings often occur during the dark night of the soul because while going through it, the suffering is so intense that as a result, you're far more likely to be open to and allow spirit to direct you. What makes the dark night of the soul different from other challenges? Unlike most life-changing opportunities, you cannot suppress it and you cannot ignore it. When the dark night of the soul comes, you're going to have no choice but to go through it. And it will last as long as it lasts. There's nothing you can do about it. Another difference is that rather than dealing with one or perhaps two significant problems, your entire life or close to it will be thrown into absolute chaos. Additionally, the dark night of the soul tests you on those things that you don't deal with on your own, that you refuse to deal with on your own. So there's probably things that have been going on, lessons that you've been ignoring because you didn't want to deal with them. Those will come up in addition to everything else during the dark night of the soul. It's like all hell is going to break loose. However, all these things are necessary for your spiritual advancement. Perhaps unknown to you, these things are already stirring deep within you. You may have some idea about it, you just don't want to deal with it. Sometimes it's things that you're not even aware of, but they will come up. Chris says, I had mine a few years ago, extremely painful at the time. Indeed, I only laugh because I've been there. it was such a healing time for me, and I met my soul tribe soon after. See how that works? Now you obviously saw it through, because if you don't, not much changes. You go through the suffering only to go through it again in the future. If you are actually successful at going through the dark night of the soul, then when you come out the other side of it into the light, so to speak, you're changed, and you're open up, or you've been opened up then to your next levels of consciousness. We'll get into that in just a minute, because it's really can be likened to a matter of tests. It's kind of what it is. It's easy to understand that way. Hi, Sherry. Trey says that seems to be when we do find our tribe. Indeed, you attract it. You attract it. So because you're operating now at a new level of consciousness, so you attract higher consciousness into your life. And those individuals that are operating on higher levels of consciousness, then you start working with that. And you've moved on, so to speak. Done with that, on to this. You too, Ray. Kim says, seems like it opened up the whole can of worms. It does. It does. I've been through a couple of them, and I'm not kidding. The last one, it was almost unbearable. And I kind of knew that I was being tested, but it was still very, very difficult to stay focused, and very difficult to remain positive about anything at all. I mean, it's so dark that you just almost give up on life, and you just think that the world's went to hell, there's no hope, and this kind of stuff. Very, 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 it's not, it's not something that you just, oh, that was unpleasant, and you make a couple changes and you move on. It's not like that at all. And it's not something that you make some adjustments and it's over with and you move on. I mean, you can make those adjustments, and you have to keep making them for years before it finally ends. It ends on its own terms. I caught you. Yeah, and as Kim says, and about the time you think you get it, the next lesson appears. I mean, it's just this series of horrific things all going wrong at the same time, and it's that kind of feeling like, what else can happen? And then you quit asking that question, because it's like, it does. Everything is just, I'm not kidding, all hell breaks loose. And those of you that have went through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not good times at all, but it's necessary, and there's opportunities in there unlike at any other time in your life. So remember, the bigger the lesson, the bigger the opportunity for growth. And the dark night of the soul has huge possibilities. You can move light years ahead on your spiritual journey if you remain centered and you hold your consciousness. We'll get to that too in a minute, because that's really the secret. I know I say that a lot, but it's the only thing that's going to get you through the dark night of the soul and out the other end of it. Anything else, and you're going to get stuck, and you're going to suffer, and then you're going to kind of piece things back together, but nothing's really going to be resolved, and you're going to go through it all again. So it's not something to take lightly. It's serious business. Chris, it was almost unbearable, but God knows what our limits are and how much we can handle. Exactly. And so that's why sometimes you heard me say, people go, oh, I'm ready to wake up spiritually. Just give it to me all. Give it all to me now. Yeah, probably not. Most people would explode if they just suddenly were awakened completely, because they're just not ready for it. So it comes in stages. It's a process for most of us. There are a couple of exceptions, Christ and Buddha being the two exceptions that I'm aware of. Hi, Nalina. Welcome. Nalina says, definitely learn to stop asking what next. Even duck when someone asks near you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Wrong question. Oh, it's like tempting spirit. Be careful what you wish for. Trey says it's been lasting forever, it feels, but the growth has been amazing. And that it does. It feels like it's never going to end. You're just falling into this abyss, and you're just falling forever. But it's not that part of it, although it seems that way, that's the way you experience it. That's not the truth. It will end. Whether you pass or not, it will end, and you'll go back to living your life. The question is, are you going to be in a higher state of consciousness as a result of it? Or are you just gonna be no better for the wear and tear, only to repeat it in the future? Because that's what'll happen. All right, so which brings us to the next point. Pass or fail, you will be tested. That's how this stuff works. A lot of people, they don't believe any of this. That's fine. You don't have to, but you're going to go through this stuff regardless. You may, like spiritual explanations are like that. They are the truth. So you can deny it, and you can say, oh, that's a bunch of woo-woo BS. That's fine. But you're only causing yourself more suffering, because the sooner you start to understand this stuff, the sooner you can rise above it. But you're going to go through it either way, not just the dark night, but all the other stuff that has to do with spirituality. You may use different words to describe it, but the journey is the journey, and you're going to go through the stuff that you're going to go through, and it must be, because the only way to get to where you're going is to move from here to there, and in between those two is a lot of necessary growth. No better for the wear and tear. Yeah. So pass or fail, you're going to be tested, and these are major life events, and they're pivotal points in your spiritual evolution. They're tests of higher consciousness. Passing the test results in higher states of consciousness, and you avoid retaking the tests in the future. Once passed, the tests are passed forever. You will ascend to higher levels of consciousness. You will not just return to life as it was before, it will be much better. This is true for this lifetime, as well as all of your future lifetimes. That is until the next test comes along, when your new level of consciousness will be tested. It's not over until you're completely enlightened. So there's going to be multiple dark nights of the soul. Sorry to break it to you. Now, an interesting thing about it is that there are occasions when we go through it as a group. Just as you go through the dark night of the soul on a personal level, you may also go through it, in a group of people. And it works the same way, but the whole group goes through it rather than one individual. And these spiritual crossroads happen when a group is ready for the same consciousness test. For example, it could be a family. It could be a group of friends. It could be some business associates or a company. Groups of people can go through the same dark night of the soul at the same time. These are shared spiritual experiences and a type of soul bonding is what it is. Kim says everything in divine order. Yep. And it will be, regardless of what our opinions are about it. Trey, agree. There's not just one. No, afraid not. Now, it's also possible for entire nations to go through a dark night of the soul. Everyone in a country. And this is a comparatively rare event, but it does happen. And at this moment, the United States of America is currently going through a national dark night of the soul. More rare is a global dark night of the soul. And this is precisely what we find ourselves in now. And the potential is enormous. Hi, Cheryl. Within the chaos is the potential for a global shift in consciousness. Now, these don't happen very often, but when they do, and if we get it right, it's gigantic steps in spiritual evolution on a planetary scale. It will literally shift physical reality. Not because when the consciousness shifts, when the collective consciousness shifts, the physical reality created by or manifested within that level of consciousness will shift accordingly. So the potential is huge. Now, these events will eventually, I mean, multiple times of this happening, will help bring about the spiritual evolution of humanity, and the result will be heaven on earth. Now, we're not there yet, but we are in a global dark night of the soul, and the possibilities are enormous. Chris says, I know that this week I'm starting the beginning of a brand new chapter, a new level possibly, and my choices will be to keep advancing spiritually and meeting more people on the same journey. Yep. And what we decide and what we do in these moments when the stuff hits the fan determine what the results are going to be. And that's why I say, to hold your spiritual center, because when you understand that these events are tests of consciousness, what that really means is that we've been making some changes and becoming more aware of things and stepping into a little bit higher self and kind of inching our way towards higher consciousness, kind of dabbling in it. And that's when the test will come. The test will test rather you really have become that level of consciousness or not. Because if not, you'll resort to the old ways when everything goes dark on you and you get scared and everything's falling apart and stuff hits the fan. And if you do that, you'll go through it, you'll suffer, and then you'll resume your life basically where you left off with even some more trauma that you have to, and false beliefs that you have to undo. But if you hold that level of consciousness during the entire process, all the way to the light at the end of the tunnel, then you have become that level of consciousness. You've risen into that level of consciousness, and people don't go back. It's always an upward momentum. It'll appear sometimes to you, people that you know, even priests or people that you think are really advanced spiritually will fall. But the truth is they were aware of higher levels of consciousness, but they had not become that level of consciousness, and that's why they were able to fall. If you're actually if you have become a higher level of consciousness, what you'll manifest is that higher level of consciousness. Usually there's a test, what I call a test. It's just the way the energy around it works. It's like there'll be things that test you to see if you really are that, or you're just kind of aware of it, because they're not the same thing. Not at all. Live, love, and be happy in the house. Yeah. Trey says that I get that many people, especially family, don't like me much. Well, they may not understand you. That's one of the problems when when you're not going through this as a group, when you go through an individual dark night of the soul and you rise in consciousness, but all of the family and your friends or the people you work with, they're all operating at the same level that they were. And so they see you as having changed, and you've become a higher version of yourself, but they don't understand it. And so, you know, most of the time what that means is that they feel a little bit threatened by it, because on some level they recognize it as being truth, but maybe, or perhaps truth that they can't live up to. And so they reject and ridicule it. And, you just have to be understanding. They're not capable of anything better than that at the moment. They will be, just not yet. Just like before you rose in consciousness to the level that you're at, you weren't capable of the level that you're at. And it's not that anybody's better or anybody's worse, anybody's superior or anybody's inferior. That really has nothing to do with it. It's just a matter of where you are on your spiritual journey, what level of consciousness you've risen to. Because when we originally came here, almost like new, consciousness expanded. You could look at it like this physical realm was created with time. And so it seems like things are happening over past, present, future. In reality, all that happened was consciousness expanded, spirit expanded. But because if you're gonna express yourself, let's say spirits in the spiritual realm, everything's cool, it's all unconditional love, warm and fuzzy, it's great. And it decides that it's going to expand, it wants to, one of the natural results of consciousness is expression of that consciousness, but there has to be a means of doing so. In this case, it's physical. And so with physical matter comes time and space. It's not just the spiritual realm where there's just oneness and there is what there is, and there always has been and there always will be. Here, it's perceived differently. It's perceived as events over millions of years and growth over many lessons and, day to day and day and night. And so we perceive it. We perceive it differently. It's really all happening in an instant. But from the way we're able to perceive the spirit or the energy with these physical bodies that we're temporarily inhabiting, we only have certain senses, and they're only able of understanding certain aspects of anything. You don't hear all sound. You hear a very small part of what there is in the sound realm. You don't see all light. You only see a small part of the light spectrum. And then you have to try to make sense of that and interpret it. And that's where we get into all this stuff. So it seems to drag out over a very long period of time. And because we're somewhat individualized while we're here, like different aspects of ourselves, everybody's at a different place on their spiritual journey, and everyone's gonna go through it. But we all kind of started out, when we did this, is almost, it's not really how it works, but there's no words that can really describe it. It's beyond that. But if you picture baby consciousness, and it has to grow up to be an adult consciousness, so it has to learn all that stuff. That's kind of what we're doing here. And so you have people that have learned certain lessons and some people who have not. They're more spiritually mature. Not better or less than, just more mature. But everybody eventually is going to age and progress and learn it all. Everybody. We're all one spirit anyway. So it's not like one of us, it's even possible for one of us to learn something and no one else to learn that. Here it appears to be separate, but it's not. That's part of the problem when we buy into that separation. So to make a short story long, your family, if you're growing spiritually, it's common actually for people that are not growing spiritually. It can be in a marriage, it can be in a family, it can be in a circle of friends. But when you grow and you're resonating with higher energy and higher thoughts and higher emotions, and they're not, it can create the appearance of even more separation. Like you've got weird, and so they kind of reject that. But it's really that they're afraid because they sense that it might be right, but that they also sense that they're not capable of that, or they don't understand it, and so they fear it. With this whole separation thing, when you separate, or at least believe, because it's not even possible, but if you believe that you've separated from spirit, there's a lot of fear and shame and guilt that comes with that. If you think you're separate from God, you may not understand it that way, but there's a lot of fear and shame and guilt that comes with that. And so that's why you see people attacking other people, because it's the way that fear manifests itself. So just understand it for what it is. They're just scared. That's all. They may not even realize it anywhere near on those terms, but that's what it is. Now, and you can't be pulled back. Once if you've truly risen to a higher level of consciousness, that's what you are. It's not an opinion. It's not something you've learned per se. We call it tests and lessons, but it's just you've just realized a higher version of yourself. You've moved to a more authentic self. You've actually moved closer to God, but other people are not going to necessarily see it that way. But you can't go back. If you've really, that's what I meant earlier when I was talking about people that, seem like they fall. They were never really there, or they wouldn't have fallen. Once you hold a certain level of consciousness, that's it. No matter how painful things get, no matter how, threatening it may be, you're never going to go back to a lower level of consciousness. You're never going to be convinced of that falsehood again, because you know better. Because and it's not even really knowing it. You are it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just what you are, Kim, seriously, what is not to like? That has got to be in them, because not only are you very likable, you're very lovable. There you go. Yeah. And it's toxic patterns it's learned behavior, and they have to unlearn it. And you can't force it. You just have to hold the higher vibration when you're around them, and whatever rubs off, whatever influences them. It's like planting seeds. Eventually it's going to grow into a crop. But it's divine timing. It's not up to you to determine when that happens. You can only to some extent determine your own development, but you can't for other people. That's on them. In their time, they will, and you just have to give them that space. That's it. Like Kim says, we're all on the same path, but not all talk the talk and walk the walk. No, because they're just not. And she says she thinks ego's at play in these situations. Absolutely, ego's at play. You know, it's like this. That's another way of looking at it. You've moved further away from ego and closer to spirit or closer to God. And so, you know, the people that are still operating at the yeah, for lack of a better word, at lower consciousness, that they're still going to roll that way. That's still going to be what they manifest because that's what they are. So that's what they create. That's what they attract, etc. Yeah, Cheryl says, yeah, you're you're such a loving person. You will attract what you manifest. That's it. Keep shining your love light. And you know, other people will be attracted to you, and you can hang with them. Right on, Cheryl. Hi, Christina. Kim says, I think our families challenge our false beliefs, misperceptions more than anyone else in our lives because we're more emotionally attached to them. You know, it's like they say, the one that you love hurts you the most. It's because you're more emotionally attached. So one of the lessons we have to learn here is not to be so emotionally attached, because you're kind of putting those people on a pedestal, and you may be putting them on a pedestal that they're not capable of living up to, and that's not really fair. You know, you're expecting far more than what they're currently capable of, and so you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're setting them up for failure. You just have to give them space, you know, love them unconditionally, and let your vibe heal whatever it's going to heal, to the extent that it's going to heal, and let go of the rest. You know, because it's not within your control. You know, Lena, everyone around you gets bits and pieces, gets to perceive it however they do. Mind boggle. Yeah. You know, it's their interpretation, so it's on them. Chris says it's not a head knowledge, it's who you become. Exactly. That's the level of consciousness I'm talking about. It's who you are. It's not, you know, the intellect at all. You know, the intellect's a tool we use when we need to analyze some information. It has really nothing to do with consciousness, not higher consciousness anyway. Yeah, it's your essence and spirit. Susan, could use some prayers tonight, trying to get a better place in my life. Things no longer serve me, being used and abused and boundaries crossed. Well, sure. Yeah, you get to decide what and how much and when in your life. That's what the boundaries are about. And just in a loving way, set the boundaries. You know, you don't have to start a war over it, but you just say, this is not something that, you know, I'm willing to engage in, and it's okay if you do, but you know, you're going to have to do it elsewhere. You know, because I'm not about it. There's probably even a nicer way to say that. That might even be a little rough. Set some people off, but you get the idea. Yeah, Kim, vibrational frequencies. There you go. You're more aware of what's always been there, and so, and you just hold that, and you let those vibes do whatever they're going to do. You don't have to really worry about it. A lot of times, I don't even, when people are being, and my kids will say that too. Oh boy, there it is, Dad. You know, and it's not really an eye rolling, but it's when there's stuff going on that I don't agree with, or I see as lower stuff. Sometimes I don't even have anything to say, but they take one look at me and they know. They know that they're slumming it, and they know that's what I'm seeing. But they also know that I'm giving them space. And if they want to ask me about things, I'll answer it. But it can't be forced, you know. You have your vibe that you put off, and that's going to do whatever good it's going to do. But people have to be ready for it. That's why it can't be forced. You know, you can be in the presence of some very high vibrating people, but if you're not ready for that, it won't. I mean, you'll get something out of it, but it won't be what it should be or could be. Let's put it that way. Won't be what it could be. Yep, love them anyway. That's right, Nalina. Button to the point. Yes. Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. Although we can't not go through these dark nights of the soul. They're going to happen. We can't determine how long they're going to go on. It's all divine timing. But I highly recommend that you don't go through the storm without a spiritual compass, because you'll get lost. And that's where spirituality comes in, not as a crutch, but it is strength, and it works well. And eventually you'll get to a place where you just trust in spirit entirely. You don't question it. Whatever happens, a nuclear bomb drops on me right now. Okay, well, that there's a reason for that. I didn't put it on my calendar, but I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? Because it is what it is. It doesn't change anything for me. I'm still who I am, and I'll just incarnate and finish what I need to do. So that's the kind of strength that and you notice there's no fear in that. There's no fear in that. It gives you the ability to act in whatever situations are going on, not through fear, or I should say, not react through fear, but also not act in fear or anger, or you do what needs to be done, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. There's a quote that's believed to be from World War I. And the quote is that there are no atheists in foxholes. I find that to be a very interesting quote. And for those of you that don't know what a foxhole is, they used to dig trenches in these horrendous wars where there was a lot of hand-to-hand combat and this very upfront and personal. But in these foxholes, not knowing when something on fire or a bomb or a hand grenade or somebody with a dagger in their hand is going to jump down into this foxhole with you. That's where that quote comes from. There's no atheists in the foxhole. In other words, you get real spiritual when the stuff hits the fan. That's what that's about. So the point is that going through the dark night of the soul is hard enough. It really is. But the suffering will be far more intense without a spiritual compass. And you may get lost. And then you may get stuck and not go all the way and have to repeat all this stuff at some later date. So, you want to avoid all that, right? And focusing on the pain and loss during the dark night of the soul, and there will be pain and loss. But focusing on that will also dramatically increase the suffering. So you see, it's what you focus on, and what you focus on is based on your level of consciousness, isn't it? If you focus on the loss and the pain and all the stuff that's going wrong, you may fall into deep despair, because it'll feel like you've fallen into this abyss of no return, descending into hell. And that's what it's like. Your life force will dim. No matter how bright it is, it's going to dim a little bit at least. How much depends on you, and it depends on how strong your spiritual beliefs are. You can even, get into such a dark place that you develop a loss of will to live. And so coming face to face with, and this is really what it is, it's coming face to face with your unhealed wounds and your false beliefs and your misperceptions. They may appear to you as demons during the process. That's where a lot of these stories come from. I was possessed, I was haunted, I was tormented by demons. That's the way some of this stuff may appear. They're not real. They never have been. It's a bad dream. It's a nightmare that you must wake up from. So it's like when you're in a nightmare, what's going on in the nightmare is you're experiencing it. It's very real to you. Your heart's pumping. You're stressed. You're going through it as if you were really going through it, but it's just a dream. And then you wake up and you go, oh, wow. That's a lot like what spiritual awakening is like. You suddenly awaken to a higher state of consciousness. And it's like what this dark night of the soul business is. Once you get past it, it's like the nightmare ends. And only then will you move on. Otherwise, you're just going to continue with your current level of consciousness until you're ready to attempt the test again. Life lessons are the course. The dark night of the soul is the final exam, right? So those of you that have had some schooling, especially college, you know what I'm talking about. There's these lessons and you're tested on the lessons, and then you have midterms but it builds up. But to get credit for the course, you have to take and pass the final exam. And in life, that's kind of what the dark night of the soul is. Chris says, all of us are here in this time to radiate our energy and love on the planet, just being the highest level of us as possible. And it's critical that we do that. It is critical that we do that. It is very badly needed, especially right now, because, again, we are going through a global dark night of the soul. The whole planet's involved in this one. Now, understanding this process helps, but it's critical that you remain spiritually centered. Remember, it's only a test, for lack of better words. It's only a test. Your consciousness is being tested. In other words, how far along the spiritual path are you? Can you hold your level of consciousness while the going gets tough? Or will you resort to your old ways? And although it may seem that God has abandoned you, nothing could be further from the truth. These are opportunities to release false beliefs and move closer to God. Jesus had his dark night of the soul on the cross. A test of consciousness he passed by overcoming the darkness of the world and ascending into the light. That's what all of that was about. He was showing us how to do it. So follow his example. Hold your spiritual center by knowing who and what you are, and then let your false self die so that you allow a higher version of yourself to emerge. Now, when you're going through this, if you feel yourself getting stressed out, just think about what we do here sometimes. Deep abdominal breathing calms the mind body. So just breathe. Just breathe. And remember that breath, the air that you're breathing and the physical process of breathing it's physical. But the breath is like that middle ground. It's not physical. Breathing is physical. The breath is not. It's a bridge to the spiritual. So deep breathing. Connect to spiritual source. And through meditation, you can learn how to do this. But you don't have to be meditating to do it. And you just simply allow spirit to flow through you and into this world. Surround yourself with spiritually minded folks. That'll help a lot. Avoid the spiritually unconscious as much as possible. They're dark. They can't help it. Forgive all who have wronged you. That's a tough one. But forgive all who have wronged you. When you're going through this process and all of this stuff's going wrong, forgive people. And this includes you, by the way. Forgive yourself for all of your wrongdoings. Let go of all negativity. In other words, forgive all imperfections. Because that's all it is. It's just imperfection. And it's not intentional. I'm not making excuses for inappropriate or hurtful behavior. But if they were in their right mind, they wouldn't be doing it. And what you've done, looking back on it, you know now that you wouldn't do that again. But at the time, you didn't know any better. So cut yourself some slack. You can't do any better than your best. And unfortunately, at that time, you were less perfect than you are now, and you're moving towards that perfection. So just forgive all imperfections. Cut everybody else some slack too. They're in the same boat. Embrace and work for the greater good. That's all you got to do. And, you know, do what you can do, and then leave the rest to God. Let me see what we got here. I know there's stuff. Trey says that the new book is timely. I'm glad that you find it so. And I'm the one that I'm kind of being guided to write next. I'm still not sure, and I never really am. It may deal with this and the global stuff. It might be a little bit of a different book, a real whopper in terms of connecting spiritual truth to the reality that we're living right now. I'm kind of being guided that way. So that I'm not sure I want to do it, but if I'm told to do it, I'm going to do it. That's how I roll, you know? So we'll see. But there will be another one, but I thank you for that. All in divine timing. Spirit speaks that way. Those books are not me. They're spiritual spirits. You know, when I say let spirit flow through you into this world, one of the ways I do that is with those books. It's not really me speaking. And so spirit has a way of doing that. Spirit is always timely, you know, and everybody will get something out of it. It's what you're ready to get is the real question. Chris says, I watched a spiritual podcast today about deep breathing, reminded me of our healing circle. Good. Cheryl, seems as we grow spiritually, there's less to prove to anyone. Yes. And the more love and fruits of the spirit we share with others. Indeed. It's unconditional love. There's nothing to prove. There's no right and wrong. That's ego stuff. Kim says, yes, forgive yourself too. And that's important. A lot of people are hard on themselves. You know, they can forgive other people for horrendous things, but, you know, not themselves. You know, I should have known better. That's ego. Let go of that. You know, now you do. So lesson learned, move on, you know. Trey, I practice my own 24/7 2-hour rule before responding more and more. Spirit versus ego. There you go. Let things settle. Let spirit guide you. Don't just react, you know. So lastly, the dark night of the soul is a natural process, spiritually speaking, that is. Know that the dark night of the soul is a natural process of spiritual evolution. And while it may go on for years, it will end. The dark night of the soul is as natural as taking a bath on a soul level, washing away false beliefs that sabotage your life and prevent your ascension into higher consciousness. Think about that one. That's true for personal dark night of the soul. And so it would be true for a global dark night of the soul. And if you think about everything going on right now, that's what's happening on a global level. Our souls are taking a bath. And depending on how much of the false beliefs that sabotage our consciousness and our planet are washed away by this process is going to determine what happens when we make it to the other end of the dark night of the soul, or if we get stuck somewhere along the way and don't quite complete it. But the potential is just astronomically huge. We could literally shift the consciousness of the planet and the reality of the planet along with it and move into a golden age unlike anything that we could really even imagine. Now, will we actually do that? Probably not, but you know, how close are we going to get to it? That's the real question. There's a lot of people involved in this. I mean, everyone on the planet. That's a lot of inputs into this consciousness. So be aware that the truth, or I should say, being aware of the truth is not the same as being the truth. There's a huge distinction there. And to pass the test, you must be the truth. In other words, you become higher consciousness by living your life through higher consciousness. Most importantly, you must maintain higher consciousness while or during the dark night of the soul in order to seize on all of the opportunities that exist. You create the dark night of the soul. Did you hear that? You manifest the dark night of the soul to allow yourself to rise above your current level of consciousness, to rise into even higher states of consciousness, to move closer to God consciousness. Passing the test means a new, improved life. Death of the old self, followed by rebirth into a higher version of you with spirit lighting the way. The dark night of the soul, when you get right down to it, is nothing more than spiritual growing pains. That's what it is. And the best way to approach the dark night of the soul and fulfill your purpose of spiritual awakening is to remain spiritually centered. Fulfill your purpose. All you need to do is follow the light. That's it. Just follow the light. Like all those old 70s poltergeist movies or whatever, move into the light. That's all you got to do. Kim, dark night of the soul always reminds me of one set of footprints in the sand. It is when we are carried. Yes. Yes. That's it. And to release the weight we have carried unnecessarily to that point. Ooh, there it is there. Okay. Chris says, in my case, I believe I had a soul contract with someone before I was born to begin my dark night of the soul. Yeah, it's part of that divine timing. You come here, and there's certain things you work on while you're here. Things are going to happen when they happen based on that. And to the extent that we do that and do it well, we move into higher states of consciousness. Awesome. You taking off then, Susan? All right. Good night. So let's move on to a healing circle. We'll do something here real quick because we're up against the clock. I try to hold these to an hour so that people can plan. All right, everybody gather around, form a circle, join hands, gently close your eyes and your mouth, breathing through your nose down to that lower energy center just below the belly button, and then exhaling back out through your nose. That's it. Everybody in a circle, holding hands. Deep breaths. And again, deep breath way down into the belly button, and then exhale all tension. Another deep breath. Breathe in the peace, and exhale all stress, troublesome thoughts, negativity, disease, etc. One more time. Breathe in peace, and exhale all the heavy stuff of the world. Everything that's not peace. So we breathe in peace and exhale everything that's not peace. Continue breathing on your own. Settle into the relaxation and move further inward. Let the outer world go for a while. Follow the breath in and releasing all tension, releasing all resistance to what is. Just let go. Breathe in consciousness. Exhale all thoughts, emotions, and sensations. And again, breathe in consciousness and exhale all thoughts, emotions, and sensations. One more time. Breathe in consciousness and exhale all thoughts, emotions, and sensations. So breathe in consciousness, completely let go. Breathe in consciousness and exhale all concepts of self. Breathe in consciousness, completely let go. There is no need to search for anything. Everything is here, where it has always been, in higher consciousness. For in higher consciousness is the presence of God. So let's sit with that for a minute and then we'll finish up. Okay. I know at least some of you are feeling that. Some of you maybe more than others. Hold the presence of God. Just bathe in that light. Become the truth. We are the presence of God. Let the presence of God flow into this world. There's no need to suffer in darkness. Let the light shine into this world. We are the light of God. We are the light in the dark, are all in need of finding their way. And so it is. All right, slowly open your eyes. How was that one? Exactly. When everyone jumps in like that and it becomes a conversation and, what's going on in people's lives, different aspects come into it, it really makes for a much better life. And we can work with application of this stuff and instead of just the whatever you want to call it, the truth or the what's the word I'm looking for? That it's not really theory, but you get the idea. The spiritual truth, spiritual philosophy. Actually, apply it to physical life. Cheryl says, really felt God's love tonight and much gratitude, Howard and Kimberly, for this time together. Love and blessings to you all. Indeed, it was powerful. I have to admit, and I know some of you felt that, and that's a good thing. And if you don't, that's okay. Energy work is something that you become sensitive to and learn over time. So I'm not asking people to live in a land of make believe or anything like that. Just know that this stuff works. Know that you probably feel calm and better than you did before the healing circle, and then that's enough. And for those of you that are becoming sensitive to it and you can feel the energy moving through the circle, great. Don't get too focused on it, but just acknowledge it. Kim's reminding everybody to drink a full glass of water and stay hydrated. You want to do that while you're doing Energy Week work. Have a great rest of your week. Chris says you're all special souls, and indeed you are. Christina, very nice. Thank you. Sleep well. Good night. All right, everybody. Oh, looks like there's more. Thank you, Nalina. Trey, a beautiful white light coming in through my left hand and radiating out my right hand, surrounding all. Awesome. Awesome. Trey, wonderful. Yes, always bring in spirit. Susan, very powerful. And it was. Spirit rolls that way. So with that, I honor the God in you. And remember, until the next time, the only way to bring about the greater good is to be the greater good. Good night.